And saying that, I'm introducing myself and why we do what we do. Thank you. My name is Yulia, and yes, Russian born, but now in America, in the Hudson Valley, New York. And I'm going to share my screen to show what we do and why we do. Everyone see the Open Hub screen?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yep.
finally, yeah, it's showing up. So this is the openhubproject.com. When I relocated to the area, exactly like Dante shared with us, I was trying to find similar-minded people, and I struggled. There is a community very dispersed in the Hudson Valley, beautiful rural, small houses, small towns, small municipalities area. So actually, I joined some tech community meetups in the city, and then I was thinking, why not to do something at the area? Okay, so you see community meetups here, and you see our programs there. We do have digital literacy, from digital literacy to digital efficiency, from digital efficiency to professional career in technology things. I welcome you to explore all these things. We're combining technology with entrepreneurship in the Hudson Valley and education with real projects built through collaboration. And the last thing I will say is introducing our mentor and speaker today. Yeah, that's me, but this is Cynthia Marcello, Dr. Marcello. Saying that, I will have the link to her profile. I will stop sharing and I will let Dr. Cynthia introduce herself.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Cynthia Marcello. I've worked in the field of IT for almost 30 years now as a consultant, developer, database DBA, e-commerce specialist, web designer, network designer, and I've also been a faculty member for the last, oh my goodness, 16 years teaching in higher education in the areas of data science and computer science. I do have a background also an MBA in e-business and also a Master of Science in IO psychology. So there's a lot of background that I have, but one of my passions is working with people that are seeking to explore and find out more about themselves so that they can feel more fulfilled and self-actualized in the field. And one thing that technology has done is brought about so many opportunities, so many choices, and so many intersections between domain areas that it makes it difficult to choose. And you're constantly looking at different opportunities and wondering, would I be a good fit? And so tonight we're going to focus on applying the SWOT analysis to the personal self for the purpose of career rather than in industry. But the principles and the underlying theory are the same. So what I'm going to do is go through a very short PowerPoint and open up some discussion. And then we're going to go into some handouts. Now, I want to make sure, Yulia, that everyone does have access to these handouts. Oh,
No, they are
okay.
not part of our community yet,
Okay.
so I'm
Which is
going to
fine.
do.
Yeah. Which is fine. So after the workshop today, you will be given access to these handouts that I'm talking about. But
Mhm.
what we will do is we'll go through them and have sort of a very nice discussion, getting input from all of you, and see if you have any questions about those. So no worries at all in that regard. So anyone have any questions before I start sharing my screen?
I am going to invite you to our Slack channel if you want to get connected,
Mm.
right? We are very responsive there. So really welcome everyone to utilize the community we already built in the Hudson Valley, New York. It's not limited to the Hudson Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to force you to create another account with Open Hub to get those files. So I will share the access to these files in a different way through Slack.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm going to have the next link here as the Open Hub Slack channel invitation. Sounds good?
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. And if I might just add that all of the mentors that work with Open Hub are on the Slack channel. And when questions come in, you can tag someone and just ask them, directly about either, workshops, something we covered, what have you. And someone will guide you to the resources that you're looking for and answer your questions. So that's something else that's really important. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And by the way, I am in Florida, as in the state Florida. Okay. And we've been under tornado watch and hurricane and all of that. But not to worry. We're here. So if the internet goes out, Yulia will take the driving of the car, and no worries. Like I said, I'm very excited to be with all of you. Okay. All
Thank you.
right. Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow. And if anyone has any questions as we go along, uh, just write them down, and we'll discuss them as we break out into our discussion. All right. So tonight we're talking about my career pathway and a personal SWOT analysis. And what's really important is uh, you want to think of who you are as a person when you're applying this. And sometimes we're so busy with life, we don't take the time to do this. So, a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is being self aware. So, a brief description of what a SWOT analysis is for those that don't know: it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So the emphasis of tonight is how can we apply this SWOT analysis to our self-awareness building in the process of career planning. That's really what it's about. So it's really a personal journey. Now, the objective of the analysis is to understand what our personal strengths are and areas that we can improve. And we all have areas that we might not feel as strong in. We might say, I feel I don't have enough skills in a certain area. Or maybe I have some skills, but maybe they're outdated and I need to upskill. So we're going to focus on those aspects. Also, how to identify those things that are outside of ourselves. So external opportunities are outside of us, and potential threats in the career landscape. These are both things that are outside of our control to some extent, but we can change how we respond to those things. All right. And then finally, the other objective is to formulate strategies for personal and professional growth. So this is how we respond in let's put it this way, a proactive way to address anything that we identify. So the breakdown of the acronym, it's very simple. Strengths are internal positive attitudes within your control. So things like your expertise, your intellectual property, or your dedication to your employer, the client, or your career. So those are things that are very powerful. They're within you. Weaknesses are also within you. So those are internal attributes that need improvement, like maybe attitude, your maybe lack of willingness to upskill, maybe your fear, there may be fear or nervousness that you won't be able to, do what is required. So those weaknesses, we're all human. And so we all experience those things. We may recognize that we need to change things, but we may not know how or whether or not we're up to the task. Now, those first two things are internal. The next two things, opportunities and threats, are outside of us. So, opportunities are those things outside of us that we basically can look at as an opportunity source, a area for growth. So, they offer advantage, things like obtaining new skills, learning something new. It can be intimidating and also very exhilarating, right? Or an opportunity might be having a closer commute to the job. An opportunity is something that is advantageous to you, your family, your goals, whatever it is. And opportunities can also be scary because you see that there's so much possibility, but you don't know the pathway to get there. But at least it's a catalyst for change, right? So it's a recognition as to what's outside of me that I can embrace and use as a way of establishing those goals. Now, threats, which are also outside of ourselves, are things like factors that pose harm, outdated skills can be harmful. You might get, put out of a job because you don't have the skills, or maybe you don't get that promotion that you want, or your inability to get to work. So I'll give you an example. I back in the day, I had a car accident and I couldn't travel anymore. So I actually started my own business, and that's how I got into IT. I actually did coding, I did database development, I did web development, and I did it all from my home. And I actually landed a contract with the Department of Defense with a $25 Yahoo ad. Okay. I would have never thought. But had I not said, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity, which was the World Wide Web back in the 90s, we all remember what it was like, right? I said, but I'm a single woman, I can't do this thing, right? I said, no, I'm going to look at that opportunity and take my strengths, which was hard work and, attention to detail and a passion for technology, and I'm going to go for it, right? Go for it. So sometimes you have to go outside of your comfort zone and you have to think about the opportunities. And that's really what I was doing. So strengths are basically inherent qualities that give you an advantage. We all have different strengths. We all can sit down and say, well, what am I good at? What qualifications do I possess? What unique skills set me apart? Some people might not be able to see those things, and you may have to reach out to maybe a colleague and say, hey, tell me what I'm good at. What do you see in me? What, because sometimes we become myopic. We don't see outside of our struggle, or we don't see outside of what it is we're going through. And asking someone what they see can be very helpful. It can also be very intimidating, right? So for example, if I say to someone, what do you see? They say, I see a nerd. Oh, okay. you know, um, yes, I have a Tetris lamp, and yes, I like geeky things. So that's good. I guess it shows, right? But some people might be a little intimidated by that, but that's okay. So in you determining what your strengths are, you want to create a list of your personal strengths related to your career pathway. That's the first part of the SWOT analysis, is writing down your strengths. Now, some people might say, well, I'm going to sit down and nothing's going to be on the paper. Well, that's where you start looking at your results. What have you done? Are there reports? Is there code that you've written? Are there projects that you've worked on? What things can you look at that are tangible, and who can you ask? There's lots of evidence as to what your strengths are. So that's another way of gathering that information and creating your list. Now, same thing with weaknesses. Weaknesses are areas that maybe we don't like to look at, right? So, for example, where do I struggle? I struggle in that I want to do too many things at once, many projects, right? So if it's data science, I'm into it. If it's hardware, I'm into it. Database, I'm into it. So sometimes narrowing it down can be difficult for some. So a weakness might be something that you see yourself in struggling. Maybe it's procrastination or time management. I know I struggle because there's not enough hours in a day, but I think we all struggle with that. So another area or source that you can get this is feedback. What feedback have you gotten about areas for improvement? It could be from a friend, a colleague, an employer, what have you. And it does not mean that it's bad. It's data. Don't take it personal. When you do a personal SWOT analysis, everything you're doing is data that you're collecting, observations. Keep it away from, your feelings, and make it more of an intellectual exercise. Okay. And some people might prefer to focus on, well, I should do better, or, maybe challenging yourself with positive affirmations. And that's okay. That's ownership in the process, right? But the worst thing that you could do is let your weaknesses define you, right? So if there are gaps and if there are things that you feel you lack, list them, but say that's okay. I'm aware that they exist, right? So if you've ever done a gap analysis for a business, it's very easy to do. You could say to the business, well, this is where you're weak. And it's something that, well, we don't have any emotional, we're not invested in that process, right? One of the weaknesses could be a lack of knowledge or understanding. Again, mark it down. because it's all good information. It's all information you could use to give yourself insight into change. It serves as a catalyst for change. I'll give you a silly example, and please don't laugh. But if you're driving a car and you don't see that you're running out of gas, right? Okay, the risk is that you will run out of gas. But if you recognize you're running out of gas, what do? You don't beat yourself up for it. You stop and get gas, right? It's just data that you use to basically drive your decision making. So now external factors are things you can capitalize on. Those are opportunities. So for all the weaknesses you identified, now you have opportunities that you can capitalize on. See how they balance each other out? Nothing is all bad or all good. It's balance. You've got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So how do you maximize this? You say, well, what are the emerging trends in my field? Maybe you like data. Maybe you like real estate. Remember, someone mentioned real estate and you like data. There's an intersection right there, data science and real estate. The domain area of real estate and data science is very hot, very awesome. Let's say you like retail, or let's say you like transportation. You can take that passion for a specific area and marry it to technology very easily. Maybe you want to take advantage of a work at home and opportunity. Again, what do you like? What do you care about? Right? And if you don't have enough training, what external training or credentials do you need to acquire? So if you want to become an affiliate marketer, you'll learn how to become an affiliate marketer. And you basically become the influencer, or the catalyst by which people buy product, right? And then you get your commission. If you want to be a network marketer, you basically take your team and you go out and you network a specific product to other people so they can then tell others about the product. So there's many ways to get into a niche area, and also an area that perhaps you're very familiar with. The third thing is to ask, is there a demand for a specific skill or expertise? Now, I know some have mentioned old programming languages. Those are essential. Why? Because it involves computational thought. And if you're using computational thought, you're using algorithms. Algorithms will always be here. Artificial intelligence right now is the trend of the century, and everything is an algorithm. So it doesn't matter if you wrote in COBOL, Fortran, assembly, everything, whether you're at the machine level or otherwise, there is logic behind it and computational thought. Those principles are so valuable, and yet very abstract for some of the newer folks coming into programming. I know, because I teach those folks. So don't sell yourself short by saying, well, those skills are outdated. That's not correct. I've also taught PLC programming, which is ladder logic. If you're an electrician or you're out in the trades, these types of skills are very important too. It's just changing how you conceptualize the circuitry, right? So I've had PLC programming classes where I've had a group of electricians and they're saying, but your circuit's opposite of mine, but the principles are the same. They're gates. And they're like, yes, gates. They understood, but they would have never recognized that had they not explored into PLC. See? So these are just things to think about. So when you're creating your list of opportunities, don't create restrictions. Say the sky's the limit. Sky's the limit. And you decide how far you want to take it, right? So when you list opportunities, that's how you're thinking. Don't think in a constrained fashion. Now, threats, we all know what threats are. These are external challenges that might pose a risk to our path, right? So some questions you want to ask yourself are, there technological changes that might make some of your skills obsolete? If so, what are the takeaways? What are the foundations that I can expand on, right? Another question to ask is, what is the competitive landscape like? Now, technology is ever evolving. Competition is superbly high. But when you think of yourself working in the field, you're helping either your client or your employer benefit and maximize their competition in the field that they're in, or the industry or domain that they're in. So the landscape is ever evolving. It's not finite and it changes all the time. Another thing to think about is what external factors could impact your career, like economic downturns or what have you. These are all possible threats. So you want to write them down as well. again, in writing these down, you're recognizing that it exists. The next step is to decide, what does it mean for me? So strategies for success involve, based on the SWOT analysis that you write down, all of those things, leveraging your strengths, addressing the weaknesses, capturing the opportunities, and mitigating the threats. And planning is key. You want to be strategic about the process. Nothing should be accidental. Now, sometimes things fall in your lap, and that's great. But you also want to be careful that it's not a blip on the radar, right? You want to say, if this thing fell in my lap, like the Department of Defense for me from the $25 ad, I had to quickly strategize as to how I, a single programmer working out of her house, would be able to support the DOT. I mean, that was a big, mental shift for me. I never expected it. And yet I had to be ready to rise to that occasion. And it took taking fear and throwing it out the window and grounding myself and making sure I was able to focus, right? And not let the doubts get in the way. All right. All right. So in conclusion, in order to do a personal SWOT analysis for career, you want to engage in ongoing self-reflection. Now, as things change, you may have to go back and use that feedback loop, go back into the process and say, now that I have new data, I need to again reflect, right? So if you lose your job, that's new data. Now I reflect and I apply this process all over again. You can reinvent yourself using the personal SWOT analysis process. You want to be periodic in this. So use a periodic SWOT analysis to stay adaptive and proactive, right? So it's reflexive process, and do this periodically. Some people do it at the end of the year, right? New year, there's layoffs, there's this, there's that, sometimes cutbacks. And so being prepared to exercise in this is going to be a tool for you. So skill set plus mindset is equal to your future. All right, that's something to always remember. If your skill set is ready and your mindset is ready, then your future is no boundaries, right? If your skill set is lacking and your mindset is maybe not in a positive frame, your future can be questionable. So that's why you always want to be refining this. And keep in mind that if you experience challenges that, in a given day that seem unsurmountable, you allow yourself to feel what you're feeling, and the next day you say, I'm going to engage in this self-reflection process. I'm not going to let it become who I am and who I will be. All right.
So beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing that. That's a lot of information. So thoughts. Let's open up some discussion.
Reflection.
Yeah. How many of you can resonate with what your strengths are? I'm just curious, like, could you identify? Let's go around the room. Why don't we do one strength per person? I'm sure we have people who know their strengths here.
Well,
Lawrence, are you first? Oh, okay.
No. Ladies first.
Yes, go ahead. Kit, go ahead.
Attention to details.
Perfect. Awesome.
Good one.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Determination.
Excellent.
Termination or determination?
Drive, determination. Yeah. Well, but then if he's doing circuits, termination is good.
Yeah.
Who's next? Don't be shy.
Yeah, I work well with people in a collaborative environment. So people would be one of my strengths.
Excellent. Excellent. That's so much needed.
Empathy too, right?
Yeah.
People skills. Okay.
Yeah. Excellent. Dante, you have something?
I've been told I have an extreme sense of ownership.
Fabulous.
So, when I do something, I put a lot of effort into it because it feels personal to me.
You're committed. That's wonderful. And loyalty. So each one of you, is anyone not gone? I think. Yulia, I think you have to list in, then I have to go. What's one of your skills?
Oh, I have so many. I would say my open-mindedness,
Okay,
always willing to explore something new, something more.
excellent, excellent. I think for me, I'm a systems thinker. So I see the big picture all
Yes,
the way
you are.
down. Yeah, all the way down to the little system, you know. So yeah.
All of these are good words. Just write them down. Write down about yourself, and you see how Dr. Cynthia is reflecting back to your strengths.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She's giving you synonyms, which provides different perspective.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that every one of you and your strengths that you listed, these are top things listed by employers, desirable, right? And a lot of people, they'll focus very much on the technical side when they acquire skills, but they forget the people skills. And everything that we do in technology, even if we're working remotely, we have to be able to communicate with the client, the stakeholder. Everything's stakeholder driven. So if we don't know how to communicate and negotiate terms and have conversations, because everything's not always going to be smooth, we're not going to be able to develop opportunities for communication, engagement, and things that will turn into a return on investment, whether it's time, money, resources, right? So you know, people talk about AI as taking away the people factor. That will never happen. It will change and things will. So, for example, you've seen AI become very ubiquitous on websites where you have a chat bot, right? That, you know, for customer service purposes. And sometimes people get annoyed with it. I know myself, I get annoyed because I say to myself, what happened to the human interaction? But the chatbot is done as a way of solving a big problem. If we don't have enough people in the call center to provide that communication with the customer, the chatbot might be able to help with some of the traffic, so that we can you know, solve a big problem. We have a lot of traffic coming in, and how do we put some to the chatbot and some to a human? And they haven't mastered that yet. You'll notice sometimes you're stuck with a chat bot and you want a human, or vice versa, right? You don't want to be on hold with a human, and maybe the chat bot could help you. So that's where AI needs to be refined, so it really understands the human that is in front of them. And that's an opportunity for that field to grow, and people in that field to help it grow. So I'm going to, I think, why don't we go to the next thing, which is weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I think we're going to go around the room and identify weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, okay? This so we get used to what those things are. So a weakness, now remember, a weakness is outside of self. Who remembers what a weakness is? It's outside of self, and how do we define it?
What do you mean outside of self?
So
like an external weakness?
External.
well, it's a weakness is internal attributes of ourself, but it is mitigated by external. So I said it wrong. It's mitigated by those things that are outside of ourselves. So what's a weakness?
All
Yeah.
right. So my weakness would be I believe you mentioned it as well earlier, that I like to work on so many projects at a time. Easily distracted.
Yes.
In a sense, or too eager in the sense that distracting myself. So
Excellent. Excellent. I'm guilty too. Who else?
I shall claim all women are. Women are easier to distract than men.
Yeah. Intellectual curiosity, right? Go ahead, Larry.
I've had my bosses telling me I'm too dogged.
You stubborn?
I grab a hold of something, a problem, and I won't let go. I've made a lot of enemies. Well, I had a lot of ill will between myself and what happened.
It's your strength and your weakness at the same time. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And probably what's driving it is the problem remains unsolved, and you're convinced that it's possible to solve it. Am I right?
yes, Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. So guilty of that too.
One of my weaknesses is perfectionism. I think, quality is what, end of the day, what the customer wants in one perspective. So I have a benchmark and I feel like that benchmark has to be met. But sometimes, you have to put the customer in front of you. Maybe that's where you should define the benchmark.
Ah, yes. Yes, KPIs, they're typically quantitative, but it's the qualitative ones that are the most difficult because quality is subjective, right? And you're probably looking at, well, we can up the quality, right? And the goal is quality for the customer. So that's, it's sometimes hard. If you have something that's numeric, you could say we met it, we met the threshold. But a qualitative thing is going to be difficult because of the subjectivity. Who's next?
It's hard to think about your weaknesses, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
I can claim being guilty to say things straightforward without any sense of tact.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say one of my areas of weakness is um, when I'm confident in the knowledge that I have, it is hard to let go of that knowledge for the sake of making someone comfortable. Um, and at the same time being willing for new data to change my view. So as a data scientist, you learn that if there's new data that you have to factor in, great. But if the data is not there, then how do I change my stance, right? So that can be and maybe that's some perfectionism too. So show me the data. It's on a coffee cup in my office.
It's really hard to claim to be guilty or just to be open about your weaknesses. So we are not requiring this. It's just really open
No.
exercise to be open here for just like your own awareness to practice it.
Absolutely.
But you don't need to do that. If Renita just recently joined, want to share or just think about her strengths, you can put it in the chat. Renita is one of our students, so I know her and I'm not asking her to introduce herself if she doesn't want to, but if she wants, she is welcome.
Hello, Renita.
Hi.
Hello.
I kind of came in late, so
We understand. We're just trying to play this game. What's your strengths? If you know any, brag.
well, I don't give up easy. So that's a strength. And then as far as a weakness, I kind of have like everything you guys said, I have all of that. I have a short attention span, I tend to jump from project to project. I have issues with wanting things to be perfect. I'm a hot mess.
Welcome to the Hot Mess Club.
But saying that, you have a good sense of empathy because you actually feel everything what was claimed.
Yeah.
You wear all of that, right? So
Yes.
this is fun. It's good, actually.
Yes.
You can turn your weaknesses into strengths.
That's right.
We will learn.
So now we talk about opportunities. So now we get to go into the good stuff. So remember, opportunities are external factors. They're outside of yourself. This is what's mitigating the weakness, right? So these opportunities are external. So what types of opportunities do we have? So I'll go first. Once you have 4 degrees, you could always take on another one. Why not, right? My opportunities is anytime I see a learning opportunity online, there's so much information online that you can avail yourself to, some free and some not. So opportunities to look at new perspectives in technology. Again, I mentioned AI earlier. I want to see what people are learning about AI and learn more about that. So that's an opportunity for myself. And constantly factoring in new information.
And you know what's going on right now? You will see some matchmaking moments happening
Yes.
right here, and that's how people are attracted to each other.
Yeah. Yep.
Then
Who
I shall,
else?
then I shall claim opportunities. The same thing. That's how I got attracted to Dr. Cynthia. I'm seeing opportunities everywhere. As explorer, I was like, oh, this is the opportunity. This is the opportunity. Then the attention span.
Yeah. I just wanted to qualify one thing though.
Mhm.
I love technology, but my bent has always been to make the world a better place, to help people. So
Yes.
applying those things to make people's lives better. So I have worked with technology with like special ed students, working with technology to help, those with disabilities and things like that. There's nothing more rewarding than applying your skill set to a group of people and making their lives better. So to me, that's like the perfect opportunity for change, which is nice.
Let me help you, everyone. Opportunities is hard to think about.
Thank you.
We need this slide.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, for me, I see like some of you mentioned that there are a lot of opportunities. The question more than seeing the opportunities, how do you focus? Because there's no way you can accomplish all that's out there. So the key is to focus on exactly what you want to go for, and then you can accomplish things.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you
100%.
mentioned that, because I do need to say that you have to know what fulfills you. So going back to your strengths, you know that when certain dynamics, certain things coalesce, you feel good about what it is you're doing. You feel self-actualized. You feel that what you do matters, right? So taking those knowledge bits and saying, I feel good when X happens, sometimes that helps you focus. And it helps you, because I have the same problem. Sometimes that helps you focus. So let's say AI. Well, I'm going to focus on AI and that thing that makes me smile or helps me sleep well at night. Or, you know what I'm saying? It's a way of narrowing down the opportunity field into something that's doable, right?
That's correct.
Yes. Feasibility. Do a feasibility assessment. So Dante mentioned in the chat, sometimes done is the best feature. Amen. Yes. So, one of the things that you have to remember, if you're into project management or what have you, at some point you have to let certain things go, right? So whether you're using an agile framework, you mentioned, quality of code versus getting the project done. And sometimes you have to cut your losses, right? Sometimes you have to let go of that, passionate approach to something. And you have to recognize that, at some point, not completing the project will actually compromise the client and or your reputation, your process, and maybe the organization. So being and that's where you loop back and you ask yourself, did I do everything I can to do the best I could within the constraints? One of the constraints is having an end point on your project. You reach the milestone, you did the deliverable, and now you go on to the next. And then eventually, of course, you close out the project. So that's an accomplishment. It just might not always feel that way.
I'm just curious if Kate is doing real estate because she is a tester, is a good tester, so she can be good with testing real estate fast, or vice versa.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, it's not a call.
It's two different path, I think. One is sales, more or less.
Which is data driven, very data driven nowadays.
So they actually, I have just learned not long ago, a week ago or so, there was a real estate analyst position.
Yes,
I'm
that's
like,
correct.
oh,
Yes.
Maybe I should go into that because I suck at
Yes.
selling.
Yes. And you just nailed it. You just nailed it, Kit. I don't do well at selling either, but I love to analyze the process of, right? So it's a product and how it evolves over the market and the trends and the patterns, right? AI is having a huge impact on real estate and other areas. Airbnb, if you just do a study on Airbnb, and you look at, I'll give you an example. You could have a downturn in a market and yet see the price of real estate not change. You could have a hit with interest. So things that you normally, the normal sales process would be impacted in a negative way. It actually turns out that it's not. And so a house might sell. It might barely get to the MLS and it sells. And why is that? And maybe it's in a market that you would have never expected it. And are there others like it? And how do we analyze that so that we can make recommendations? That's fantastic. So that's an opportunity, Kit. That's wonderful.
Yeah, but there is also another opportunity I was thinking. It's called the AI whisper
Yes.
engineer.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, and again, it goes back to what am I passionate about? What drives me in the morning? Is it intellectual curiosity? Is it the power of data to be able to provide clarity? There's something in data science called ground truth. Okay. And one of the things that I find very refreshing is the data doesn't lie, provided that the data wasn't tampered with, right? And you have a pure data set. Whether it tells a bad story that you didn't want to hear or a good story, it's ground truth. And from there, you can work from. But when you have bias in the data or you have data that is, tainted in some way, then it's very hard to work with that data. So when you have raw data in front of you that can create potentiality in some way, that's very uplifting. And so that's something that may drive you because you want to create those opportunities for people based on the data. Those insights are very powerful. And unless they're looked at with a very clear lens, they get away from you. And so many companies have that problem. They say, we have data. That's nice. What did it tell you? We don't know. We don't know how, right? And real estate is one area. There's so many others. Healthcare is another. Retail is another. So the opportunities are endless. So I'm looking at, Lawrence wrote about, having a problem in aerospace on an aerospace project and a design flaw that was perceived and, insisting that they made a mistake and they moved it into production and passed, and ultimately, the aircraft crashed. So those are things that, and as software developers, we always run that risk that our software and or our, machinery, what have you, anything we develop could have that problem. And the one thing that I always train my students is, if you're asked to do something that's not ethical, you have to decide where's that line and be very comfortable with walking away from a process that you can't sleep at night with. I've done it in very, very well-paying jobs. And I've had to say, you know what? This has crossed my boundary. And I can't sleep at night. My work is no longer fulfilling because of the risk and the fact that, I'm being asked to do something that I'm not comfortable with. That's also an opportunity for growth because you were able to make a stand. So if you look at just the money, that's the myopia, that's the myopics. If you look at the opportunity for growth, I'm so blessed that I took that opportunity to get the heck out of Dodge. So, yeah.
But in Lauren's case, they could be done with another way as well. What about the
Yes.
testing side, right?
Yes.
So if you cannot get the developer to correct what they did, you could go further down the line and have testing done.
This sounds like hardware, and you can weigh in, Lawrence, but it sounds like a design flaw? Was it software or hardware? Because either way, testing could
Either
be
way,
done.
testing would
Right.
be supposedly to catch these.
Right. It sounds like
defects.
they were not, okay, hardware, and it sounds like they were not willing. They wanted to push it forward. So, you know, a lot of times, even software, we write software, we know there's bugs, we're asked to put it into production. It's still in staging. We want to roll it back. We want to fix it. And or basic laws of physics are ignored, right? So I'm curious, Lawrence, would they permit testing or did they ignore? Because I'm sure you called for testing or something to address those flaws.
I was being interviewed to work on this project. It was a DoD contract. I can't say what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the circuitry. I said, you can't do that. I can't say what it was, but this
Right.
basic physics. It's like, I can't explain really, but
it was a basic principle was being violated.
yeah. And
what,
here they were where we have, you know, you have basic, you know, you have military background, you have, you know, commercial stuff like that. We didn't have PhDs. I said, okay, but in what? You know, English lit, because obviously it wasn't physics.
Yeah.
I got dismissed from the project, and a few months later, I heard on TV that the plane had crashed, killing everybody on board, and I was upset.
Yeah.
Why didn't I push it further? You know, who could I push it to?
Right. Well, Lawrence, I'm glad you shared your story because my dissertation was in power dynamics and workplace bullying, and what you just described was a dynamic of power. And the sad part is you couldn't change it. You recognize that it was there, and ultimately something catastrophic happened. And so, you know, one of the things that you obviously you have an opportunity to basically explore ways of forgiving yourself, because it sounds like, you know, it had a really bad impact on you. You felt powerless and there was really nothing you could do. And it's unfortunate that they pulled the academic card, right? Because as we all know, it doesn't matter if you're degreed or not. Sometimes the, you know, principles and laws of nature have nothing to do with academia, but we may recognize those laws of nature. So one of the things that we will always have is threat. And those threats are things outside of ourselves that pose harm, right? You know, your inability to get them to change their stance or that power dynamic or create a power shift is something that is an organizational culture problem, right? And so that would have to come from the top. And given the nature of the organization, right, that's very difficult to accomplish because it's political in nature. So I can definitely understand, you know, your frustration and such. So that's a very powerful story.
I see the comment from Dante about startups. So this is the opportunity. This is the strength and opportunity at the same time, I believe.
Yes, yes. So let's see here. I'm scrolling through the, okay, so.
He worked in startups and learned the hard way that the customer doesn't care about the quality of your code or anything. It's all about speed of your development cycle.
Yes, and being done, right? One of the things, and I've experienced the same thing, one of the things is your customer, your end stakeholder does not always understand the implications of everything, right? So they don't understand everything that you put into the code and its purpose. They don't understand, and the same would follow for individuals that they do their job a certain way, and individuals on the outside may not understand the purpose and the implications for all decisions that are made. And again, we may be limited in being able to affect change and changing people's minds. So sometimes having a conversation about implications works and sometimes it doesn't, because it may still fall on ears that don't want to hear, right? And that means that the goal is outside of yourself. The goal is to push the project into production, into the hands of the customer. And the customer may be the one that's saying, give me the project, give me the software, you know? So as long as you explain the risks of them taking on the software, you can clear your conscience, but it's still not easy because it becomes a part of you. Every line of code that you write is a function of yourself. And when you're a machinist, everything that you do on that machine is a function of yourself. When you engage in a transaction, a sales transaction with another entity, you pour all of yourself into that. So if it's not a successful outcome, you know, it's sometimes hard to recognize what you could have done different to change the outcome.
May I add?
Mm-hmm.
I just see the fact he's watching this from the prism, having things done. You can probably add something like done fast, done in the prototyping mode. You don't need sometimes to do things perfect, but we're talking about minimum viable product here.
Yes.
If you're familiar with the lean startup approach,
Mm-hmm.
this would be your actually strength. You can turn it into the strength.
Yeah.
Done, having things done fast, and you're really good with prototyping.
Right. Well, and that's how Scrum evolved. You know, agile frameworks came about. But again, you have to be able to, I think there has to be consensus, right? That we will accept done as this, we define what done is and recognize any limitations of done. And that also goes for personal SWOT analysis, right? On a daily basis, we recognize what we are as done, as evolving projects, and we accept it. And then we move forward.
Yeah, good point. In the
Yeah.
chat, everyone, please pay attention to the chat. It's really
Yes, interesting.
evolving.
Yes.
And I have to say that those who joined our Slack already got the access to the material, to handouts. And I guess,
Excellent.
Dr. Cynthia is ready to start the next round
Absolutely.
of exercises.
Absolutely. So the first one I'm going to share with you, and you all should have your documents. The first one I'm going to share is the self-reflection template. So let me go ahead and share that. Now, the idea is that you would either print this out, or if you have the ability to fill it out online, these are obviously PDFs. Can everyone see my screen? I'll make it a little bigger maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, let me make it a little bigger. Let me move this out of the way. Okay, so in a self-reflection questionnaire, you're basically going to identify your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we've done this a little bit. But what we want to now do is create those thought processes and pivot them towards reflecting as introspection, right? So the insights that you're going to, and you want to be honest and thorough. And of course, we're not going to see your sheets, but the insights that you will derive from these reflections will guide your subsequent career related decisions. So the first question is, or the first prompt, I should say, is a career highlight. So you want to describe a situation or project where you felt most effective and satisfied in your job. Okay. And again, it's to focus on the high points of your past. So we'll take maybe a couple minutes and jot this down.
So we're working on the question 1 only, right? Career highlights.
That's correct, right? And we'll just take it one step at a time. Now, that being said, if you get done and you want to move to the next one, I'm just going to quickly read the prompt while we're in this mindset. You're then going to talk about challenges. So you see where we're going with this. You want to recall a work-related challenge you faced recently, and how did you address it? What would you do differently if faced with a similar challenge in the future? So those are the first two prompts. Okay. And then I'll go to the next prompts.
How do we enter the information, our own text?
Okay, so if you don't know how to manipulate a PDF and you have it open in like Acrobat and what have you, you can edit it. What I would recommend is, do you have the opportunity to print it out? If you can print it out, that would be great. If you can't, then what I would do is just use the prompts that are on the screen and get a notepad, a piece of note paper, and jot on the note paper. All right. I think that would be the easiest, rather than show you how to do PDFs, because they're all different and sometimes they can be a little frustrating.
Are we supposed
Don't-
to type on this screen?
No.
No.
You write
Okay.
down.
Yeah, just write it down.
Don't let technology ruin your experience, okay?
Yeah.
Just experience answering these questions for yourself. We don't need to reflect on everything, so it's your exercise right now. And I think
Download?
for the
Can I
time,
download this?
You can download it, yep, and you can print it.
Where's the link to download? I don't see it on the invite.
do you see chat?
Oh, in the chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the chat, yes.
All right.
There's a
all
link
right.
to the Google Drive, yes.
So I don't want to turn this into 5 hours workshop. We
Yeah.
have some time limitations as well. So the
Yeah.
time constraints, let's do the next exercises as a self-reflection without any feedback. We are doing
Yep.
this. Dr. Cynthia is guiding us, and
Yep.
you are writing this down for yourself.
Yep.
Then
And
you can do it again after the workshop.
absolutely right. So you're not going to complete this exercise during our time together, because you're going to think of things later that you forgot and what have you. So just think to yourself, could I think of these things, and maybe jot some down. We're just getting the ball rolling here. And I want to go through and just explain what each one is. So the next one is about team dynamics. What a fun concept, right? So think of a time where you worked on a team, and what role did you naturally take on? So if you volunteered for a role on that team, what was that role? What was it about? And do you feel it played to your strengths? Were you the team leader? Were you the, quality management person, testing person, whatever it is, Okay. So that's the team dynamics. The next one is learning and growth. Now, this is one that, we've talked a little bit about. What new skills or knowledge have you acquired in the past year? All right. Now, I would say you could also add the past 2 years, because we know with COVID, a lot of us kind of pivoted to different opportunities for learning. So if you want to expand that to the last 2 years, that's fine. And think about, how have they contributed to your professional development? So learning comprised with or combined with growth, right? Okay. And then the next one is feedback. And I'm going a little bit fast because we have a couple of sheets to go through. So I want to just expose you to this. Feedback. Share a piece you've received from a colleague or supervisor that stood out to you. How did it make you feel, and how did you act upon it? Very, very powerful. Internal to self. I felt something. What did I do with those feelings, right? Very important. That's feedback. We talked about feedback loop before. You utilize those feelings to create that feedback loop. So what did that look like? And then the last one on this page is future aspirations. All right. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Are there specific goals or milestones you want to achieve? So this is something where you're going to be a visionary about yourself and where you're going. Okay. Again, you won't fill them all out tonight while we're here, but this is the purpose of that particular fill-in part of the form. All right. And there's a few here. Personal barriers. Are there any beliefs or fears that you feel are holding you back in your career? If so, what are they? This is identifying those things. All right. The next one, work-life balance. How do you currently balance your professional and personal life? Are there areas where you feel improvements could be made? Does your work life encroach into your personal space, and vice versa, right? And how can we balance that? Skill assessment. You want to list 3 skills that you believe you excel at, and conversely list 3 skills you could use improvement on or further development. The next one, this is wonderful. We're talking about a personal SWOT analysis value proposition. So if you had to describe your inner unique value or contribution to your organization or your workplace in a sentence or 2, what would it be? These are hard to do, right? But that's why you're going to take some time and think about it before you actually write down. And then the last notes and reflections are areas where you can expand on these things. So questions that got triggered by doing the exercise and things of that nature. Okay. So that's the first worksheet. Does everyone understand what they want to do with that first worksheet?
It's your self-reflection. So we're
That's
not going
correct.
to do it right now.
And you don't have to expose your answers to us because this is about you reflecting, right? So basically this is your exercise for later on. Now, and the reason I'm going through each sheet, I just want to explain what they mean in case there's questions. So the next one is the opportunity threat matrix. Now, I created a list of items that I thought might be interesting to start the conversation, but you want to add to that list. So based on either a set of industry trends, observations that you've made in technology, practice changes, for each item, right, you want to either give it an O or a T. So the rise of remote work during technological advancements, do you see that as an opportunity or a threat? And based on your assessment, what action would you take? So for each one of these, right, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, there's many more, identify whether or not you see it as an opportunity or a threat and what action you would take. Okay, and you can see there's a bunch of them here.
Can we download this?
You can. It is a PDF. Yep.
Where?
I will show you later.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. So we have a drive that you'll be able to download from. Okay. So does everyone understand that you would put an O or a T and then you would describe the action? So everything's action oriented. All right. The next one. Now, role playing is very important. So you are going to perhaps have a role play with someone that you trust, a colleague, it could be a family member, what have you. So role playing allows you to practice your skills, understand your strengths, and identify areas for improvement. So this is almost like, let's say you have to give a presentation. You have to sell a product or an idea and you don't do it very well and you're not comfortable. You would role play being the presenter in front of a friend or a colleague, right? So it's that same thing. So you might expand on that and say, well, what if they don't like my presentation? Or what if they ask me questions on slide 5 and I'm not comfortable? Your friend or your colleague would say, well, I'm going to be that difficult client that gives you, maybe throws you questions that you might not be able to answer. And you're going to then figure out how to answer or deal with that difficult audience member or client interaction. So each one of these things, okay, has a setting, a scenario, and roles. So you would find one that you want to work on, and there could be more, right? I just created a laundry list of the common ones, but you would want to come up with ways of identifying how you fared in situations such as that. So again, that's where you're going to get a colleague, a family member, a friend, and you're going to do this type of exercise. Okay, because you're going to learn more about yourself. That's all about it. Your strengths, your weaknesses, how did the scenario make you feel and how did you handle those emotions? This goes back to emotional intelligence, which we could do an entire workshop on. Were there alternative ways to handle the situation? If so, discuss them. Again, you could do that with a friend or colleague and have those conversations, right?
Cynthia,
Yes.
question. You just talked about 2 handouts, right? Or 3?
There's actually 4.
Yes, total is 4. I'm just thinking about time constraints. So
Yes.
you introduced 3 or 2?
I introduced the 3. I'm going to the
Okay.
4th one. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll be able to wrap up at 7:30. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So this is the 3rd one. This is exercise 3. And now I'm going to go to exercise 4. Now this one's an interesting one. This is called a strengths card sort. All right. So basically, this is a list of skills, positive things that you may possess. It's a strength that you possess. So what you want to do is you want to create index cards, and you want to list these things on the index cards, and or do it on pen and paper. Organize it into, I already possess this thing, or I need to develop this thing. So communication skills, let's say you feel that you're not a good communicator, you'd put that in the need to develop pile. Technical expertise, let's say you already possess it and you want to put it there, but you also want to put it in the need to develop. That's okay, because you're seeing that there, although I possess a foundation, I need to develop more. And so this is part of that reflective exercise. Team collaboration, adaptability. If you don't like change, maybe you're not very adaptable. So maybe you need to develop that. Time management, problem solving. All of these things are different things that you may feel you possess that maybe need further development, which is fine. You're identifying it. If you have cards in both piles, what does that create? Does anybody know that answer? Based on SWOT. If I have cards in both piles, I have the for change. Opportunity, right? Opportunity for change. So if it's very common to have the cards in both piles, I possess this, but, right? I possess that, but, right? So it's okay to qualify the fact that you possess something with, I need to develop it in this way. And that's the opportunity for change. The threat would be not recognizing that you have the opportunity and that you are powerful enough and resilient enough to change, right? So it's okay to have it in both piles. Does that make sense to everyone? Any questions on that? Now, these, by the way, are very, very common exercises. There's many, many more, but I picked the top 4 that I think will give you a great start. They actually have entire workshops for days on these types of exercises, just so you know. So, there are some, that pay a lot of money to go to these workshops, and they'll spend days on different aspects of your SWOT analysis. This gives you a good starting point. And like I said, it's designed to be self-reflective.
Thank you very much. Let me show you how you can get more.
Yes, I'm going to stop sharing so that you can share.
Okay. So once again, I'm sharing. If you are logged in with Open Hub, if you're with us already, so there are my classes. So Lawrence and Renita at least can see it, right? And we have special talks, Tech Academy special topics, those meetups or open workshops we've done so far. You see they're diverse. We've done actually way more, but right now these materials, SWOT analysis for career development, and if you choose this one, so you see not only all these handouts, but also the slide deck and such.
Mm-hmm.
This is for our students. If you are on Slack, you also receive the whole link to the SWOT analysis
The
on
Google Drive, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So those 2 ways we're sharing with you all these files, not everything, absolutely everything, but at least we're sharing with you the handouts, specific handouts links in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
You can see those. And of course, I understand it's good to be guided by your coach and do it together with the coach with hands holding, but at least you received really good sense of how this may work for you, and you have self-reflection time. Please do it yourself with one-on-one with yourself. Yourself is the best coach ever. Give yourself time.
So does anyone have a question about that process? Because it's possible that there are questions that I can answer.
I expect some needs to reflect or bounce your
Mhm.
self-reflection on others, which is possible, and we can provide these opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Keep in mind that this reflection process is lifelong. So if you're thinking you're going to get it done tonight, you'll have to reinvent it. We do this as humans. Did you know every New Year's we do reflection and we have New Year's resolution, right? We do this all the time, right? But it's rare that we focus on one aspect of our lives, like career, and apply it in such a regimented way. So,
Thank you, Renita, for acknowledging these materials and know-how which Dr. Cynthia, as a coach and data diva, developed using all the knowledge available. And these are very condensed and very helpful for your daily routine. That's
yeah,
so much so.
yep.
Any feedback, any reflections before we finished? We have 7 minutes to do something else. Once again, I really have to appreciate Dr. Cynthia with sharing all her amazing materials and guidance and actually coaching, group coaching right here.
Yeah.
I'd like to take the opportunity to say that thank you, Cynthia and Yulia, right?
Yes,
I
thank
got
you.
it right.
Julia. Yes.
So I think a lot of questions are going to come in when you're going to actually do it. When you actually do
Yes.
it, the questions would be, how do you, there are two scenarios conflicting in your own head. So how do you put it together? Those kind of stuff. So from the explanation, everything looks simple, straightforward. But when you do it, it's not as easy as it is what I would
Yes.
think.
Exactly. You need pair
Yes.
programming.
Great, great question, Gary. Great
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just do it first and see where you need feedback or collaborator.
Right. And it's
Can
not
we
a
just
process
go
that you
on
rush.
Slack and start asking questions?
Yes.
Can we
Sure.
use the Slack channel? Okay, good.
We
Yep,
have special help me out also if needed.
Okay,
That's what
great.
Slack
Yep.
is. This is our Slack. Okay, our Open Hub Slack.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can connect you with amazing mentors and coaches like Dr. Cynthia and
Many more, many more.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing to remember too is um it's an in order to be agile as humans, we have to be willing to revisit. Like today we might have a reflection and say this is what it is, and tomorrow we get new data and we have to change our thought process, and that's the beauty of it. It gives us opportunity and empowers us to change gears as we need to factor in new data. So I think that that's something that well, I'm going to call it agency. For anyone who understands what agency is, we have that opportunity for ourselves to have agency in our lives. And so we get to make decisions based on many factors, and there's no one size fits all approach. It's a personal journey, really. And so what someone else does may not work for you, and that's okay. That's what makes it personal and gives you agency. If we didn't have that, we would be a robot. And then we would be AI, right? We would be a robot. Do robots have agency? Oh my gosh, that's a question they're still trying to answer. It's. So as humans, we have agency, and that's what defines us and makes us different than the robot that is working with AI. So that's how special we are.
thank you again, Dr. Cynthia. Just to advertise, we have different, very diverse workshops to offer. I don't know how you found about us, maybe meetup group. Sounds right.
Yeah.
There were a few interesting similar, I shall say, not very similar, but in certain way similar workshops given by John Sturman, and he is using liberating. He's certified with liberating structures facilitation. He is also Scrum and Agile master, teaching at RPI. So this would be the opportunity. Maybe we will repeat this again. But what I'm saying right now is just stick with us. Stay tuned. Slack is probably one of the best cases, one of the best ways how to get announcement and or meetup Not everything is posted on Meetup, but everything what is on Meetup is posted on the Slack. And we're also sharing some insights and some special access to materials on Slack channel. And of course, everything is on Open Hub. So we are always using the community we're building to matchmake each other, to help to find your mentor, to help you find your peer programmer or a potential collaborator.
Is that the objective of the Open Hub project? To kind of, meet?
Once again, the page, the homepage shall say our value proposition straightforward.
Okay.
Empowering through learning, but it's not only that. So once again, combining technology with entrepreneurship and education with real projects built through collaboration. We're not limited to the Hudson Valley, but Hudson Valley has our love. So we are hands-on matchmaking, combining technology with real life, education with real projects, but everything through collaboration. You're not alone in this journey. You need others to be reflected.
And actually, it's a lot more fun rather than doing it alone, right? Oh, you learn so much more when you explore with others. So wonderful, Lawrence. You got them downloaded. Wonderful.
Good job. Okay.